Jacob's hands, rough from years of lifting boxes, gently tucked a worn blanket around his son, Leo. The little boy was fast asleep in his small bed, a soft toy elephant clutched in his arms. Their apartment was tiny, just 2 rooms filled with hand-me-down furniture, but Jacob made sure it was always warm and clean. Pictures Leo had drawn were taped to the fridge, bright splashes of color in their cozy world. Every morning, Jacob would wake long before the sun. He'd make a simple breakfast, usually oatmeal, and pack a lunch for himself, a peanut butter sandwich and an apple. Then, with a kiss on Leo's forehead, he'd head out. His job at the big warehouse was hard work. He spent his days moving heavy crates, stacking shelves, and pushing loaded carts. It wasn't fancy work, but it paid the bills, most of them anyway. He worked extra hours whenever he could get them, dreaming of a day when he wouldn't have to worry so much about money. Every ache in his back, every tired sigh was for Leo. His son was his whole world, and Jacob would do anything to see him smile. One sunny afternoon, a special excitement filled their little home. Leo's 7th birthday was just 2 days away. Jacob had promised a small celebration, and today was grocery day, which meant a trip to the big store. Leo bounced beside him, a worn teddy bear tucked under his arm as they walked through the aisles. Jacob pushed the cart, carefully picking out items from his list: milk, bread, eggs, and some apples. He always tried to get the best deals, checking prices closely. As they rounded a corner near the bakery, Leo gasped. His eyes grew wide, sparkling with pure wonder. There, in a brightly lit display case, sat the most magnificent cake he had ever seen. It was a chocolate cake, tall and round, covered in smooth, dark frosting. Tiny, colorful candies sparkled on top like jewels, and a swirl of creamy white icing decorated the edges. It looked like a cake from a fairy tale, promising joy and sweetness with every slice. "Dad," Leo exclaimed, pulling on Jacob's shirt. "Look, it's the best cake ever. Can we get that one for my birthday?" Jacob looked at the cake, then at Leo's hopeful face, his heart feeling a familiar tug. Cobb's heart ached at Leo's hopeful voice. He knew the cake was beautiful, but he also knew the numbers in his wallet. He picked up the cake, its weight feeling heavy in his hands, and added it to the cart. They continued shopping, gathering the last few items from his careful list. As they approached the checkout, Jacob felt a knot of worry tighten in his stomach. He watched as the cashier scanned each item, the total slowly climbing. He mentally added up the cost of the cake, the extra expense that hadn't been planned. When the cashier finally gave the total, Jacob's shoulders slumped almost invisibly. It was just a few dollars more than he had. He fumbled in his wallet, counting out the crumpled bills and coins. He had enough for all the groceries, the milk, the bread, the apples, but not for the magnificent birthday cake. He looked at the cake, then at Leo, who was bouncing slightly, his eyes still shining with anticipation. "I'm so sorry, champ," Jacob whispered, his voice thick with disappointment. "It looks like we can't get the cake today." Leo's smile faded slowly. His shoulders drooped and his hopeful eyes clouded over, a sad understanding dawning on his small face. He didn't cry, but the quiet disappointment was even harder for Jacob to bear. Just behind Jacob and Leo, a kind woman named Sarah was waiting patiently in line. She had a small basket of her own groceries, mostly fresh fruits and vegetables. Sarah had been watching the father and son from the moment Leo spotted the cake. She saw the boy's bright excitement, then Jacob's hesitant look, and finally, the quiet, heartbreaking conversation. She saw the way Jacob's shoulders sagged, the clear disappointment in his eyes as he told his son no. And then she saw Leo's face. It wasn't a loud, angry cry, but a slow, quiet sadness that settled over his features. His lower lip trembled just a little, and he stared at the beautiful cake with a longing that tugged at Sarah's own heart. She felt a deep ache, remembering her own childhood hopes. It was a small thing, a birthday cake, but to a little boy it was everything. Sarah knew she had to do something. She couldn't just stand there and watch. A plan began to form in her mind, a way to help without making Jacob feel uncomfortable or embarrassed. She took a quiet step closer to the checkout counter. As Jacob reluctantly reached for the beautiful cake to put it back, Sarah quietly stepped forward. She leaned over the counter, speaking softly to the cashier so only the cashier could hear. "Please add this to their total," she whispered, discreetly handing over a crisp $20 bill. She then quickly stepped back, pretending to be busy looking at a magazine rack. The cashier, a kind young woman who understood immediately, nodded with a small, knowing smile. Jacob, still focused on his son's sad face, hadn't noticed a thing. He gently placed the cake back on the shelf next to the register. The cashier, however, cleared her throat. "Sir," she said, her voice bright, "it looks like there's been a mix-up. Your total actually covers everything, including the cake." Jacob frowned, confused. He looked at the screen, then at his wallet, then back at the cashier. "Are you sure?" he asked, his brow furrowed. The cashier simply smiled. "Yes, absolutely. All good to go." Sarah watched from behind, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. She saw Jacob's surprise, then a flicker of hope returning to his eyes. She quickly looked away, not wanting to be seen. Cobb stared at the cashier, then at the glowing number on the screen. It was truly enough. A wave of relief, warm and unexpected, washed over him. He didn't understand how, but he wasn't going to question it. He quickly pulled out his money, paid the total, and then, with a joyful smile, reached for the chocolate cake. "Leo," he exclaimed, his voice filled with newfound happiness. "Looks like we can get the birthday cake after all." Leo, who had been quietly looking at the floor, snapped his head up. His eyes, which had been so sad just moments before, widened in disbelief. Then a slow, radiant smile spread across his face, lighting up his whole world. He bounced on his toes, clapping his hands softly. "Really, Dad, the chocolate one?" he asked, his voice a mix of hope and wonder. Jacob nodded, carefully placing the cake into the cart. "The chocolate one," he confirmed, winking. Leo giggled, a pure, happy sound that Jacob hadn't heard in what felt like ages. Holding his dad's hand tightly, Leo couldn't stop looking at the beautiful cake, already imagining his birthday wish. Jacob, watching his son's beaming face, felt his own heart swell with a happiness that money couldn't buy, grateful for this unexpected turn of events. A week later, on a bright Saturday afternoon, Sarah was enjoying a walk in the local park. She loved the green trees and the sound of children playing. As she strolled past the swings, she saw a familiar sight: Jacob and Leo. Leo was laughing joyfully as Jacob pushed him higher and higher on a swing, his own face beaming with a gentle smile. The beautiful chocolate birthday cake had clearly been a success. Sarah felt a little shy, but a strong feeling told her to go say hello. She walked towards them, a friendly smile on her face. "Excuse me," she said gently when Jacob paused the swing. Jacob turned, a slight frown of confusion on his face. He didn't recognize her. "Hi," Sarah continued, feeling a blush creep up her cheeks. "I think we were in line together at the grocery store last week. My name is Sarah." Jacob looked at her, then his eyes widened slightly in recognition. "Oh yes, I remember," he said, offering a polite smile. "I'm Jacob, and this is my son Leo." Leo, ever curious, peeked from behind his dad's leg. "Hi," he chirped. Sarah chuckled. "It's nice to finally meet you both properly," she said. And just like that, a simple conversation began, sparked by a shared moment and a kind heart. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Jacob found themselves bumping into each other more often at the park, or sometimes at the local coffee shop. Their brief hellos turned into longer talks. Sarah learned about Jacob's life, about his job at the warehouse, and the long hours he worked. He spoke about it without complaint, focusing instead on how it allowed him to provide for Leo. She noticed how Jacob's eyes would light up whenever he talked about his son. He shared stories of Leo's funny questions, his drawings, and his latest adventures at school. Jacob might not have much money, but he made sure Leo had everything he truly needed: love, attention, and a strong, supportive dad. He would often say, "Leo is the best part of my day every day." Sarah saw how Jacob always put Leo first, whether it was saving up for a new book or spending his only day off playing catch in the park. His dedication was clear in every gesture, every word. It wasn't about fancy gifts or big vacations. It was about being there, truly present for his son. Sarah found herself deeply impressed by this kind, hardworking man and his boundless love for Leo. Their chance meetings at the park and coffee shop soon turned into planned outings. Sarah would often join Jacob and Leo for their weekend trips to the library or a nature trail. They talked for hours, sharing stories about their lives, their dreams, and even their silliest childhood memories. Jacob found himself opening up in ways he hadn't done in years. He discovered that Sarah loved to read just like him and had a clever, witty sense of humor that made him laugh until his sides ached. Sarah, in turn, found Jacob to be a truly gentle and thoughtful man. He was always interested in what she had to say, and his quiet strength was comforting. They discovered they both loved old movies, long walks, and simple home-cooked meals. Even Leo seemed to enjoy Sarah's company, often running to show her his latest drawing or telling her about a new game he learned. The three of them would spend afternoons building sandcastles or reading books under a big oak tree. With each shared laugh and easy conversation, their friendship grew stronger, building a bridge between their different worlds. They found joy in the small, everyday moments, proving that true connection didn't need grand gestures. Sarah had dated men with more money, men who could offer grander things, but none of them had Jacob's heart. With every passing day, she saw more clearly the true richness of his character. It wasn't about the size of his apartment or the balance in his bank account, it was about the way he lived his life. She admired his quiet strength, his honesty, and his endless kindness. He was a man who worked hard, not for fame or fortune, but to provide a loving home for his son. His devotion to Leo was the most beautiful thing Sarah had ever witnessed. Jacob taught Leo about respect, about working hard, and about finding joy in simple things. He was patient, always listening, and always there. Sarah realized that these qualities, his integrity, his gentle spirit, and his profound love were far more valuable than any amount of wealth. She found herself drawn to his genuine nature, a man who faced challenges with a quiet dignity and always put his family first. It was clear to Sarah that Jacob's worth wasn't measured in dollars, but in the immeasurable goodness of his soul. Cobb found himself looking forward to seeing Sarah more and more. Her smile was like sunshine, and her eyes held a warmth that made him feel seen and understood. He was drawn to her kind heart, which was clear in the gentle way she spoke to Leo and the thoughtful questions she asked about his own day. Sarah listened without judgment, and her understanding nature was a comfort he hadn't known he needed. With Sarah, Jacob didn't feel the need to pretend or hide the challenges of his life. He could talk about his worries about money, his long shifts, or his dreams for Leo, and she would simply listen, sometimes offering a quiet word of encouragement. He felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. It was easy to be himself around her, to share his thoughts and feelings without fear. Her presence was a calm, steady anchor in his often busy and stressful life. Jacob realized that Sarah saw him, truly saw him, beyond his job or his small apartment. She saw the man he was, a loving father and a kind soul, and that made him feel more hopeful than he had in a very long time. The easy friendship between Jacob and Sarah started to change. A gentle current pulled them closer, making their smiles linger a little longer and their goodbyes feel a little harder. They found themselves thinking about each other when they were apart, wondering what the other was doing. Little touches became more meaningful, a hand brushing lightly against an arm, a shared look that spoke volumes. One evening, after Leo was asleep, Jacob called Sarah just to talk. The conversation flowed easily, as it always did, but there was a new softness in their voices. Jacob found himself telling her about his dreams, not just for Leo, but for himself too, dreams he hadn't dared to voice before. Sarah listened, her heart feeling full. She realized how much she valued his presence in her life, how his kindness and honesty had become a comfort. As the weeks turned into months, they both understood that their connection had grown far beyond simple friendship. They cared for each other deeply, a quiet, strong feeling that settled warmly in their hearts. It was a love that had grown from shared moments, deep respect, and the simple joy of being together. One cool evening, after a long day of playing with Leo at the park, Jacob and Sarah sat on a bench, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Leo was tired but happy, nestled between them. The air was calm, filled with the gentle chirping of crickets. Jacob turned to Sarah, a soft smile on his face. "You know," he began, his voice a little shy, "I never thought I'd find someone who understood me or who made me feel this." "Happy." Sarah looked at him, her heart fluttering. "Me neither, Jacob," she whispered, reaching out to gently take his hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, a simple gesture filled with deep meaning. "You and Leo. You've brought so much light into my life." In that moment, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the evening, their different worlds truly came together. He, the hardworking dad from the warehouse, and she, the kind woman who had seen beyond his struggles. Their bond was built on respect, kindness, and a shared understanding that what truly mattered wasn't what you had, but who you were and the love you shared. It was a moment of quiet promise, a beautiful beginning for their unexpected love story. Time flowed onward, bringing more shared laughter, quiet evenings, and sunny afternoons. Jacob, Sarah, and Leo became a family, their lives woven together by threads of affection and understanding. Sarah often helped Leo with his homework, her patience shining through, and Jacob found he could still make her laugh with his silly jokes after a long day at the warehouse. Leo, once a shy boy, now bloomed with confidence, having two loving adults to guide him. Their home, though still modest, felt rich with warmth and happiness. They didn't have a lot of fancy things, but they had each other. Jacob no longer felt the heavy burden of going it alone. With Sarah by his side, life's challenges seemed a little less daunting, and its joys shone even brighter. Their story became a quiet testament to a simple truth. That wealth is not found in what you own, but in the kindness you show, the strength of your spirit, and the depth of your love. Jacob, Sarah, and Leo, hand in hand, proved that a good heart and true love are the most precious treasures of all.